So things that I wish I knew before I started was first and foremost the name of the business. It's important to workshop the name of the business, whether or not it's easy to say for other people. Does it work for your target customer? And if that's not easy to say, it means it's not memorable. When somebody like hears it and they're interested afterwards, they can't like go and remember it easily and search it up and then follow up on that. A timeline and a target. Okay, I'm willing to invest this much in this thing, and I'm going to work on it for this long. I'm willing to spend say 50,000, 10,000, or 100,000 on this thing, and I'm going to push it for say 5-6 years, and I'm going to dedicate 4 hours of the week towards its success. And if I need to dedicate more time towards it, I need to be pivoting in the business more constantly than I have been in the past. Hello and welcome or welcome back to another episode of Rural Living and Innovation. I am Anele Ngoya. Maqhuba zomhlanga phela indlela ukhosha uthahla unyawoza please ingane kababa. I am I loved my dad. I'm wearing my dad's like jersey now. It's a bit old, but I'm wearing his jersey today. But yeah, so today I'm going to talk about a little bit about things I wish I knew before I started a business. Actually, let me get the birds out. Hold on a second. So I've got like 3 birds that the boys cooked for me, and we're going to expand the cage and keep some more for food. But they might be pets, but we don't know yet whether it will expand. But today I want to talk a little bit about things that I wish I knew before I started a business. I think when I started the business, I was very naive and like so optimistic about the returns and what it would take to get those returns. And I didn't really think too much about the systems and the costs and stuff like that. So a bit of why like the inspiration towards like that led me towards starting my business is at home we have a bit of a farming situation. We've always been farming. I think it's like farming is part of like village life. Like I said in the previous episode, I am working on rephrasing the rural part of it and using village instead. So farming is a part of village life. I don't know if I still have it, but I had a drone footage of like a village from what is it? Where Zuma's from? Oh gosh, Kandla. I think it was in Kandla, and yeah, like each home has, yes, there are homes. A home is not just a house. In like what is a home? We all know like a home isn't just a house. For us in the village and in the Bantu context, a home is you have a dwelling where you can like make food, where you can keep things safe, where you can keep things away or protected from like various varying weather conditions. But it also has space for you to produce your own food. Like most homes are designed like that. Usually it's also a bit lower than the rest of the house. I think historically that's also meant there's drainage towards the house, but if your land is flat you can't help it, and you just like section it out where there's like a section for the house, but then there's a section for the garden, and then having fruits also. But a part of that culture has become a bit lost over time, with like forced removals and like the colonial project. So some of those practices have been lost. Like people still keep gardens, but they won't necessarily use it. They will leave a space for a garden, but they won't necessarily use it. They will have a space for cows, even though they don't have cows, because that was also part of the practice. But the thing is, we now don't have the land to have both on like a 50 by 30 square meter piece of land, or a 50 by 50 square piece, 50 by 50 meter square piece of land. So some of those things are now like, it's almost like lost in translation. But also some families keep those things because they traditional or cultural practices that are, or exercises that are performed in the kraal esbayeni. So they will have the sbaya even though they don't have the cows, because they still conserve or perform some of the practices of old that were done in the kraal, even though now they don't have cows. So that is what a home sort of is, and I might talk a bit more about that on in a different episode. But at home we've always had that, but then we've also had like agricultural land that we use for commercial farming. Not commercial farming in that it's like 50 hectares of land, or like tens and tens or hundreds of hectares of land. It's like 10 or 15 hectares of land that we use to produce like a certain amount of food annually that we sell to people that come. They come here, they pick it up, they take it wherever they sell, or we deliver the, because we have a van, we deliver the vegetables to wherever they are. So that has always been a thing that I grew up with. So I always knew, was okay, like it's easy to make money through product sales. It's a lot easier to make money through product sales. And so, but also my mom growing up was a very curious person, if I may say, or she was adventurous. If she understood what adventurous is in English, she wouldn't necessarily say she's adventurous. But I think my mom was adventurous, and as a result, I was acquiring some of those skills as she was adventuring. So, for example, she did beading for a while, and so I can bead also because she did beading. But she was just like, no, it's not worth her time because her eyesight is poor. And then she did like beading on, she was also doing beading on cloth, so like tapestries kind of stuff. And then she did like a pottery. They'd make clay pots and they would like paint them in different ways. And then she'd sew. She still sews some of her clothes. She refuses to sew for me. So my mom has always been adventurous or industrious in that way, but not all of her endeavors have been profitable, which is something that I am learning to like practice now as a 30, almost 30 something year old. Is like, not everything that I do, or not all the skills that I acquire are necessarily need to be turned into a profit. And I'm at a point where I've asked myself about Earthly Q, which is my personal care brand. I've asked that about myself, about Earthly Q, and then I've given myself a timeline for like when I'll make the decision on whether or not this should stay a hobby, or if it's actually a worthwhile business. So things that I wish I knew before I started was, first and foremost, the name of the business. It's important to workshop the name of the business, whether or not it's easy to say for other people. Does it work for your target customer? In retrospect, I should have given my business a Zulu name. I should have given it a Zulu name, or an easier English name, because you do want to have, like, I was thinking like market exposure and, exports and whatever. But right now my target is local, and local, it should be like, it should speak more to the local like narrative, and I feel like it doesn't. My business name is Earthly Q Personal Care, and I found that a lot of people struggle to say it. Especially when I'm doing like funding applications, or I'm at an exhibition or a market. And I don't know if it's just the people that I've experienced, but it's a note that I have now made, which, okay, maybe my business is also not easy to say. And if that's not easy to say, it means it's not memorable. When somebody like hears it and they're interested afterwards, they can't like go and remember it easily and search it up and then like follow up on that act. So that's one. Two is like, I feel like with the logo and like physical branding and stuff, I was okay. I'm like, now I'm at a point where I'm okay. But when I first started off, I had no intentions of actually having labeling. I had no intentions of having labeling. I had 3 products at that time, and I had no intentions of expanding beyond those products. It was like, I called it Earthly Q Hair Care at that time. So even that, I've had to change from Earthly Q Hair Care to Earthly Q Personal Care. And if now I change to a different name, it's possible. It's not like a not possible thing. It's possible. But also at the same time, it's just like, oh my gosh, the admin of now creating a new logo, of changing the website, creating a new hosting, getting a new domain, moving the website to the new domain, and all of that admin, it adds to the more time passes, the more admin you have to do to rename. So it's just easier to do a workshop before, even if it's just with friends and family, like do a survey of whether or not, like, which names they prefer, even if you have 3 or 4. I think in another episode with Pendurani, the episode about soccer in Richmond, I'll try and link it somewhere. He talked about how he had 3 names and how they went through the process of finding a name, and a name is very important. So that for me is first and foremost. The branding systems I had on point. My niece was doing graphic design at UJ at the time, and she's pretty like nimble with Adobe, I don't know, Illustrator. So she created my logos for me, and then we did the the labels. We did the labels on Canva. So that part of it was a bit easier, and already when I started, I was aware of those tools, but I was using Canva for social media instead of for like printing and labeling purposes. So that's one. Two is I didn't intend on having proper branding or labeling on the things. I just wanted to have a logo, and I had 3 products at the time, and they would be distinguished by their cap. So the one was a spray, it had a spray cap because it's a moisturizer. The one had a nozzle like this, and because it's a scalp cleanser, so you're supposed to apply it on the scalp. And then the one was a butter, so it was in a tub. So each one was distinguishable by its physical feature, and I was going to insert a pamphlet into the thingamabob. But what I quickly found when I started setting up, was that people didn't always want the 3 as a set. And then people sometimes, so for example, the hair butter wouldn't run out, and then they'd want just the moisturizer because they don't wash their hairs often, but they moisturize their hairs often. And the hair butter they don't use as often or as much because it's a butter. So I realized, okay, probably have to sell these as individual products. And then quickly realized, okay, these products are too small, because it was all 3 products were 100 ml bottles, and I was selling them for 100 rand or 150 at the time. I was selling 3 products for 150 at the time, and the maths that I'd done was working, because I hadn't considered labor, I hadn't considered like space, I hadn't considered electricity. That price was just considering the raw materials and then like a little bit of a profit margin. So it wasn't necessarily a thing. So having a growth plan prior to like launching, for me, like when I launched, I was like, okay, I'm launching with this and I'm just going to do it, and there's no growth plan other than scaling the number of products that I'm doing, the amount of products. So instead of producing a batch of 100, which I used to do, I'd produce a batch of 1,000. But I quickly realized, okay, no, that's not gonna work. And yeah, so the second thing that I would do is have a proper growth plan before actually launching or executing. What are you starting with? When that is done, what is next? How will you know whether the first phase or the first implementation of the product has been successful or not? And then moving on to the second phase. Because for me, I feel like I have been doing, because I just launched, I've been doing everything at the same time, like creating a growth plan while I'm also solving, like the operational inefficiencies and problems in the business, while also at the same time having to create new products, like execute the growth plan. And that has been the biggest stress of setting up the business, is that I didn't have a plan, and my plan was to just do, and that's not good enough. Like when you have a product and you know how much the raw materials cost you, that's not good enough to say, okay, you have a business plan that is now like executable. And I realized that I started this business in 2019, and I realized that, oh no, 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 I'm treating this like a hobby, and it's not. And if it is to be a business, there needs to be more structure, more documentation. It was in 2021 or something, and it was when I was participating in the Warm Hub accelerator program. I'd been part of the Girl Inch program, I think in like 2016 or 2017, when I was still a student, and it was about entrepreneurship, inspiring, like the intention was to equip engineering students with entrepreneurship skills, but also encourage them in the engineering space, So that's when I started being like, okay, let's do this. After that, I was sending out proposals and stuff. But so I started in 2019, and then 2020 or 2021, I was part of the accelerator program, and I learned so much from that. It was like a year-long thing, and you would have like video courses over time. I still access some of those videos even now, because you get a lifetime access to the educational content. And then we had like a week-long boot camp in Pretoria somewhere, and we learned so much from that also. And the end of that was going to be, we pitched to investors our businesses, and we execute everything that we were planning in the week-long boot camp. And then at the end of the 6 months, the boot camp was like halfway through, and then at the end of the boot camp, we would pitch. That's when I realized was I don't have the systems. And I'm going to fail miserably when it goes to when it comes to like the pitching. And then also I'd realized, because the only income I was getting was from the business, the business couldn't pay me essentially while it was starting off, and I needed it at that time. So I just started looking for a job in order for the business to have a bit more like breathing room, so to speak. So realizing that the business couldn't support me while it was also an infant was one of the biggest reasons why I started looking for a job. But also I wanted evidence of like what systems in a workplace look like, because hopefully I'll hire people and like I can hand over the systems. And the Economic Growth Accelerator by Warm Hub really helped me realize how important systems are in a business. So the first mistake is like the naming of the business. The second thing is like having a growth plan before you execute. So because I didn't have a growth plan before I executed, I've made so many more mistakes, and I feel like that has been a big contributor to why my business has not really grown over the past couple of months, because I have, like, while at startup phase, I'm also like at growth phase. I'm expecting income while there's expenditure. So after I couldn't finish the Economic Growth Accelerator, because while I was enrolled in the accelerator, I got a job at where I work now, and I couldn't balance all of those things. And also, to be quite frank, I was still feeling a bit insecure about my career opportunities, or like my potential and my ability to execute, because I just spent 2 years away from school because I had like deregistered because I'd been going through things, and even just the things that I was going through, the mental and emotional strain of the things that I was going through, that led to me deregistering. Everything had been just weighing on me, and to be quite frank, my esteem was very low. So I didn't feel like I could balance the expectations of the program and the expectations of work, and then still do the business, because like at the end of the day, all of these things I'm doing because I want to further the prospects of the business. So I started working beginning of 2022, and that's when I was like, okay, now it's go time. And I can't explain it now, but unfortunately I moved to Durban like in April of 2022, and I lived there until November. Fortunately, like, it wasn't a bad experience, it was a good experience, but I moved there from 2019 to November, but while I was there, I couldn't really do anything towards the business because I've been intentional about setting up here in the village and not in the suburbs, and I'll explain that a bit later. And so I couldn't afford to travel home all the weekends just to work, and then also for me to work, I needed like products and ingredients, and those were quite expensive, and I didn't have space and stuff. So 2022, I was just like really refiguring out, redesigning systems, using my experience from my workplace in any way, shape, or form to sort of feed into the expertise of the business Earthly Q. And some of the things that I was doing at the time was like finalizing formulations, making sure that I've got like the spreadsheet, the formulas for each ingredient in a spreadsheet, and that I don't have to like recalculate how much each ingredient is for me to make the product. I can just enter it into a like spreadsheet, and then it gives me how much of everything that I need to make. I also, even like, I was also exploring whether or not it would be worthwhile to get I'm a barcode. Like, you buy a barcode. If you didn't know, you buy a barcode and they usually sell them as a bulk. And so, for example, I was looking at the prices of the thing and I was like, oh, it would be better if I had 5 products, so I would just buy the batch of five barcodes and get a discount. So it's a bit stupid, but like, honestly. And also, people in the DMs on Instagram are asking whether or not I have any skincare products, and so through that I evolved and I added more products. But as I was evolving, I was also sharing it on social media as that part of the post. Oh, we have a new product, but actually it's just a product that I finalized in my formula. It's not a product that I have in stock and can send out to people. I don't have 50 of these. I probably have like 5, to send out as testers. And even then, I give those testers to like people in my circle, and by the time somebody's interested in the DMs or on the website, I don't have products anymore. And because I gave the products away, I don't have money to buy new ingredients. So it was just like a huge mindfuck. Like, it was just expensive, and it was just and the shame also of having to admit, oh, I don't have it figured out. I've made this thing, I've sent this thing to people, I share this thing with people, but I actually don't have it figured out. And that would also send me into like cycles of just like doing nothing, and just like chain smoking, and just like doing nothing towards like the end goal. And so like 2022 was really like a reflective year. I was like deep in my feelings. I was going deep in me to like figure out like, okay, why am I not like successful? What do I want for this thing? What do I have to do for it to be successful, and all of that stuff. And so I came out of 2022. I had gotten the space to build this office I think gotten in July of 2022. I had started building while I was away, so my mom was like project managing it for me, and would, like, if I needed to buy stuff, would ask the guys to go to the hardware store for me. And so they like built the walls, which is why I also don't have footage of that part. I realize now is they built the walls and they put up the roof, and while I was in Durban. And then when I came back, we just finished up like the walls. So this was now beginning of 2023, finishing up the walls, plastering, um ensuring the windows and things are set, putting in the shelves a little bit, building other shelves, trying to figure out how the space is going to look. So even throughout last year, there hasn't been much space for me to make anything. It's just been a space of really just like setting up the infrastructure, making sure that the space for me to do what I need to do to create the product is actually there. So sometimes you think you can run a business from your bedroom, because there's space in your kitchen, but in reality you can't. I realized that like 2020 already, because I would at the time I had a bit of I was freelance writing, so I did have a different income other than a job. But then COVID hit, and then there was no money. There were no conferences. But from I'd realized from like 2019, 2020 that no, I need a space to call my own where I can do this for, so that it doesn't interrupt my personal life also. But then when I got a job and it was remote work, it's also the space where I can do my work without there being an interference with my personal space. So setting up in the village was also a strategic decision, because I realized, so prior to moving to back home and before setting up in KZN, I tried to set up in Stellenbosch, and I realized I need like permits, and I wouldn't be able, when they say businesses are built in backyards and garages, I wouldn't be able to have a backyard experience or a garage experience situation, because I wasn't from there. For me to use anyone's rental space as commercial property where I'm running a business, and my landlord at the time was like, need to get insurance for your stuff, it's just complicated. And so I realized it was, okay, there's a lot of legal red tape in the city. That was like a biggest red flag for me about the city, or suburbia, rather, not the city, because Stellenbosch isn't really a city. That you need permits, there's a lot of fees that come with participating in the suburban system. So initially I was going to move to Durban, and then they sold the house in Durban, so I moved back home. And then that's when I was like, actually I can get land and build. But biggest red flag also, okay, the thing that I wish I knew before I started, it's something I wish I knew I started before building, is that it's going to cost a lot more than you think. I don't know, I had some illusions that this would be like a 25,000 exercise, and it would be over and done within like 3 months. And I've been at it since the end of 2022, 2023 now, and now we're at the end of 2024. And even now, it's not at a space where I am like sort of happy with it or proud of it. And I feel like, okay, this is like the headquarters, but like it's a lot further than than where I was at the beginning of the year. I installed like a toilet, we built a septic tank. I had ambitions of having a kitchen that side. I think I'm also going to do a tour. Like probably the next episode will be like an updated tour of the office and like how things are looking now. But it is a journey, and it's more about the journey than the destination, because there is no destination. You fix one thing and then you move on to the next, and then you move on to the next, and then you move on to the next. The list of to-dos never ends. And I wish I knew that. I wish I knew that going into the business. I think had I had a growth plan initially, like a business plan, I did have a business plan, but like I didn't understand what a business plan is supposed to be and what it's supposed to do for a business. I think even now I probably don't understand it as well as I should, but I understand it better now that it's a plan. It's not just a document that you use to apply for funding. It's a document that you use to plan out your activities, to plan out your finances, like to plan out everything, to plan out how much stuff you need. It's not supposed to be like blue sky thinking. It's supposed to be a real and executable plan, and so I had one initially, but it was really aspirational, and and I thought like it would be easy to get funding, and I didn't realize how much effort would go into me creating a track record so that I can qualify for the funding, to have something to show, to have a proof of concept. I underestimated the amount of effort that would need to go into it. And I think we all do it, especially if you are somebody from, I feel like, a village or a small town setup, and you go to university and your worldview is expanded, and then you think because now your worldview has expanded, that is the extent of how expensive your worldview can be. But actually there can be more. Like for me, that was the realization, that there's always more. And it's taken me being out of school to realize, because education doesn't only happen in the classroom. There are different types of education that happen. The one that happens in the classroom is just like academic, but the learning happens in so many different ways, and it's always going to be happening. It's never going to stop. And I think as like I'm approaching 30 as I'm approaching like 30, I'm becoming more okay with that. Like some days are really, really hard, and I'm like, oh my gosh, fuck the shit, I'm closing it down. And like especially when I don't even, like, sometimes I've got like 2 products in stock, and like there hasn't been any orders for a month or 2 or long month, and I'm just like, what is there to even shut down? And that's also hard. Like, that's also hard to be like, you've been working on this thing for so long, but quite frankly, there's nothing to show for it. And you have to make the choice right there and then whether it's still worth pursuing, investing more time and effort into it, or if it's already dead and done. And it's easier said than done. It's easier said than done because I've put in so much effort into this thing, and I still have plans, and I appreciate the progress that I've made. I think when I don't have stock at all, I think it's only to the outsider that doesn't see the progress that I've made. It's like sometimes when I've been sitting up here and people are like, oh my gosh, your place is always dusty, but I'm like, you don't understand the steps that I've taken, like how many times I've actually cleaned this place. There's always cleaning. If you're building, you are always cleaning. And my God, it's another thing I wish I knew. Like, I wish I knew I would always have to be cleaning. And Every time the builders leave, they might clean up, but I'll probably have to clean up again. And because it's not necessarily a reflection of the quality of construction work in the village, it's more you're getting what you paid for. So sometimes they won't clean and you'll have like mounds of sand to move because like they just like they plastered and everything else that was left behind is for you. So sometimes that happens, and I wish I was just better prepared for that, because also for me to have that experience of walking into a finished, office and like moving day and everything is not happening all at once, I would have to have a bigger budget than I do. And honestly, I don't. And so sometimes you have to take the shit, quite honestly, because like it is what it is. For you to move an inch, a mile, however much you want to move, you just have to do what you need to do in the moment. So I wish I knew. So that's the, I think, third or fourth thing, that I wish I knew how much building actually costs, how much time it actually costs, the effort that goes into just building. I wish I designed the space before. I tried to design the space before, but like I'm still realizing things even now. Like when I extended, I built that was supposed to be the kitchen and bathroom, but while I've been using it, I've just been like, I don't really like the fact that the bathroom is right next to the kitchen. So I've moved the kitchen back into this area, and the former kitchen I'm going to use now is just like a storage facility and like cosmetic studio, so to speak, where I make the product, and the kitchen is like for food. But for now I'm using the kitchen on the side to make cosmetics also. But like having like a clear plan and executable, having being able to mark the milestones on the business plan is really critical. And if you haven't created that prior, it's very difficult to then do everything as you're doing and then manage the emotions of doing everything as you're doing, planning as you're doing, and then like the emotions of just like disappointment in business anyway, the anxieties of sales and everything else. It's just easier if you have a plan prior to execution. Another thing that I wish I knew, like launch events are important, like they are critical. That's how you get the buzz going. We did a launch event, and I think in my case it was also because of COVID that I couldn't launch. But the launch event was like everything else my business has been very haphazard, very like in the moment kind of thing. And so there are things that I didn't have in place, like for example, collecting people's cell phone numbers, touching base with them afterwards, connecting with them on social media, like those kinds of things I could have been better prepared for. Marketing it properly, marketing it myself, and not using like abantu bakutwitter, because and yeah. And then the other thing is that it costs money to make money. I thought I would only need the initial startup cost for the raw materials, and like my friend borrowed me 5 grand because I was broke, I was a student at the time, and that's what I used to buy the raw materials. And I've used it to buy, I think, a new stick blend. I bought like some things to work with, and then I bought raw materials. And I made a few sales, but I quickly realized I would need more money to make more money, which is why I eventually got a job. But you need money to make money, and it's easier if you have savings or you have something. If you have like, even your savings also can't just be like your initial startup costs, like the stuff that you need to get to get your proof of concept. It needs to be more. It needs to like consider like growth steps, like if you need to buy new equipment, if your equipment breaks, if you like, you don't have to do it that way, but it's not like an annual thing, it's not a every 2 years thing, it's a daily thing where you are investing in a thing, you are putting in effort. And quite frankly, I've been like, okay, I was like, before getting my job, I was like, can I dedicate my time towards somebody else's dream? And if I can do that, why can't I find time within a day to dedicate my time towards my dream, so to speak? And I think the working, having a job and a salary has helped with creating the discipline while giving me the roles that enabled me to like work on my own things on the side. Um, Being back home in Richmond is also a very big contributing factor to why I'm able to like put in money into the business, because I'm not paying rent. I just buy groceries and electricity, and then the rest is towards building this thing. Even though it's not much, it is enough for me to make the progress that I am making here. It might not be the progress that I initially set out to make. It might not be as far along as I thought it would be like 2 years back, but it's definitely further along than when we started off, and that's okay, you know. Accepting that there are stages of the business and each stage requires different resources is very, very critical. Otherwise, so it's either you will not grow out of the space you're in, or you'll just like consistently be solving problems that don't even matter to your bottom line. And considering that it's a new year, I'm hoping like 2025 really is for profit. And yeah, like I've been like 2022 has been for like documenting, laying the groundwork. 2023 has been for setting up the 2023 and 2024 have been for setting up the infrastructure, and I really hope like 2024 is for profits, because angisafuni waste imali kule nto. Like it's not wasting money, but I don't want to put in any more money into the business when I'm not getting any out. Like I don't mind not getting any out for a bit longer, like 2 years or a year or so, but at some point it needs to stop needing me and needs to just like work by itself. And yeah, maybe I'll do like another episode like this, because I feel like I was a bit all over with this episode because I didn't write any notes. But maybe I'll do another more structured episode and like talk about like, okay, like in terms of documentation, in terms of like structure, infrastructure, like organograms, like hiring plans and all of that. But I'm not there yet, and like so far I feel like these would be the most like useful things that I would like to know as somebody who is just still planning on starting a business, has just started a business, or just wants to. There's nothing in place yet. You just have a desire to start. It's consistent work, and once you've started, it's not like, oh, now you have a business. It's like, oh, like what does it take to make your business profitable, and like what profit margins are you looking to make? How much money are you actually looking to make? Will you need people to hire? Will you need to hire people to like meet those margins, do the work that you need to do to hire to, you know? So it is a bit challenge. It is more challenging than just offering a product or just offering a service, but it's worth it, Shem. It really is worth it. It's really fulfilling. When I put the labels on a thing or I'm shipping out an order, I feel like it's worth it. So yeah, I think let me end now. My throat is tired. I've been speaking for about 40 minutes. But I hope you enjoyed this episode. If not, let me know in the comments. Why not? Maybe it's a bit lengthy. But if you enjoyed it, please let me know in the comments what like you would add, if there's anything you'd add, if you have a business also, if you are not, or you're looking to start, like, yeah, some thoughts or some questions in the comments, and I really appreciate it. Comments like are the only reason I'm still doing YouTube. Because quite frankly it requires a lot more effort, so yeah, than I thought. Clearly I am consistently undermining the effort that things take, but yeah, I hope you enjoyed this episode, and I hope you're subscribed somewhere down here, and I will see you in the next episode. Toodles.